Hello, welcome back to Stinky. Back playing Overwatch, but I kind of want to talk about something, and Overwatch is a perfect example of this. Just been thinking about it, and it's how do we play like online games as a Christian, you know? Because that's a real like thing, you know? Because like as Christians, we're not called to just like be like everyone else all the time, right? And it can be hard in online games. I'm very guilty of it, you know? You just get super angry and you just start, you know, yelling at your team. It's very easy, you know? And so how do we kind of live that? And hopefully I can be a good example here in this game. To be honest, I don't know. You know, there could be some bad exampling going on. But I think one of the biggest things is oh, I missed. Kind of like an easy question. But what game are we playing, you know? I mean, I don't play too many online games right now. Overwatch is like, I missed every, but like, Overwatch is a big one for me. I think that's the only one that I really am actively like playing right now. Oh, Dota 2 actually. So I'm still playing Dota, like, but like just looking at what kind of games we're playing, I think is the first most important thing. And then after that, what are we saying in that game that we're playing, right? And depending on the game, it's going to change a lot. For example, like multiplayer games like Overwatch, voice watch is huge. Voice communication is huge. Voice chat is just massive for the game. So I feel like it's easier to fall in when we're playing a game that has voice chat. I feel like for me, I don't know about you, but for me it's a lot easier to fall into that trap of yelling at my team, getting angry at them and yelling at them, right? And now just feeling anger isn't like necessarily a bad thing, right? But unbridled anger is, right? So in a video game, let's be honest, you don't need to be getting that mad, right? Because it's not something that actually like matters. It's not for the kingdom. It's not anything like that. You're getting mad that, you know, you're 0-10 or whatever, right? You're not actually mad over like a valid reason. And even then, we're still called to forgive, right? So, you know, instead of yelling at your teammates and being like, you guys are terrible, we're kind of called to be a little bit better than that. And to just be honest, you know, and be honest with ourselves too, and see that in ourselves. We're like, oh, I'm, you know, being very like angry to my teammates. I'm being very unfair. I'm judging them, right? Because we're also called not to judge, right? And this sounds stupid talking about a video game, but a lot of times we do still judge, even in that context. We're like, oh, my teammate's terrible, they're an idiot, blah blah blah. But like at the same time, like who are we to say that, you know? And at the same time, it's like if we apply the same judgment, we're also playing like an idiot. Like in this game, I'm doing terrible, let's be honest. So kind of like you have to keep that in your mind, right? If I was being judged by my teammates the same way, would I like think that they're right, or would I be like, no, you know, oh, they're being just super judgmental? And it's easy for us to just lie and say, oh, no, I'm being 100% honest when we're not, you know? Oh. So that's like a big one to think about. How are we treating our teammates in these games? Right? And kind of off of that, how are we treating the enemies in the game too, right? Because we're not just in the game with ourselves. It's not a single player game where we're just like kind of just doing whatever, you know, where it's like, oh, haha, I don't like this character. These are like genuinely other people, and I feel like a lot of times we forget that while playing video games, where it's like, oh, no, it doesn't matter what I say to this dude, you know. So that's kind of a big one. Just how are we treating teammates in the game, and what games are we playing? You know, I would say probably the two biggest right there. And then after that, another one is, how are we like treating these games, right? Are we letting these games kind of take over our lives, like putting our games first? Or are we actually using them as a good, like, medium? Sorry, not mediator. Medium. Are we using the games as a good medium, right? Because a lot of times as Christians, sometimes we fall into the, if we're relaxing, it's automatically bad, which is not true. Okay, you're allowed to relax, okay? And I feel like a lot of times in certain circles, we kind of forget that. Or I want to say forget that, but we take it a little too far, right? Where we're like, oh, I can't relax at all. I always have to be doing something, blah, blah, blah. If I'm not doing something, you know, I'm being slovenly. And I think there's a very clear difference. Oh, bad play. There's a very clear difference between being slovenly and relaxing, right? Slovenly is more, God has given us these gifts. Instead of using this gift, I'm gonna play video games, right? That's kind of slovenly. More. Obviously, there's more to it than just that. But that's kind of like a good rule to have. But spending an hour on a video game a day, I don't know what other responsibilities you have, but for the most part, you should be fine, right? Or not even an hour, like 30 minutes. Or like, you know, some unit of time that is not absurd. Like, or, I mean, if it's your job, that's different as well, you know? There's like different instances for it, I would say. And if it's your job, then it's a little different because it's your job, right? And you know, people are gonna be like, oh, our job doesn't matter. I'm saying, like, God gave us gifts for other things in our lives, right? That we can show the gospel through. Okay? And he gave us those gifts so that we could reach people in those areas. And so we could use... He could use us for the best of the kingdom, right? The betterment of the kingdom. So, for example, I'm not like great at video games, I'm not gonna lie. But like, if you're like a pro gamer, like, yeah, God gave you that gift, right? To be a pro gamer. And it would be kind of slovenly if you're like, nah, I'm just not gonna use it for God. I'm just gonna use it however I want, to it's whatever. It's my plan. You know? And that goes for other areas too. If God makes you a great artist and you're gonna spend your time playing video games, that's pretty slovenly, right? And there's a very clear difference if you were like pro gamer using it for your job and using it for the Lord, like a streamer or something, right? Yeah, you're spending a ton of time. There's one streamer I really like. I can't think of his name right now, but he spreads the gospel on streaming. When I find him, I'll put him in the video here. But I really like his videos, right? And he's streaming. So obviously, inherently playing video games is not magically just evil because you're playing a video game, right? Unless it's like a very clearly bad video game, you know? Like, I'm trying to think of a game that would classify. But like some kind of, if you're playing some kind of like just heinous video game, yeah, like probably shouldn't be playing that. You know, I'm trying to think of a game. I can't really think of one. I know there's like, probably Postal would actually be not a good game that you probably shouldn't play as a Christian. You know, Postal's not exactly a great game with great morals. That we should really be using. I'm gonna be honest, it's not amazing. So I would say that's probably an example of a game that probably isn't glorified in the kingdom. You know, it's glorified just like slaughter. You know, mindless violence isn't the greatest for your soul. And that kind of goes back to that first point, where what are we doing? You know, what kind of games are we playing? Because games like that are not putting us in a good mind spot, right? They're teaching us mindless violence, and they're teaching us kind of bad like a bad heart position, right? They're teaching us to kind of hate our neighbor and be angry at them, when in reality we should be loving our neighbor and showing them love, right? And don't take that out of like, well, if my neighbor is sinning, clearly they're okay. He's clearly just spreading heresy out here. Like, bro, you obviously know what I'm referring to here. Like, come on. So with those big points out of the way, right? What games are we playing? How are we acting in these games? Overview, how are we acting? And how are we treating these games? It's important to ask, how should we ask? And how should we react in video games, right? And I kind of went over this like very briefly, but how you treat your teammates and enemies is really important, right? Are you treating them with respect, or are you kind of just like trashing on them, being annoying, you know, kind of just being rude? Or are you, you know, being fair to them? I would say the first rule is just be polite. That doesn't even apply to only video games, right? And if you think it does, I don't know what to say. You know, because that applies to your life as a whole. I feel like that's not even like crazy to say, but I feel like you do have to kind of say it. And that's also, just want to make this clear, because I should not have to make this clear, but somehow I feel like I have to make this clear. Not disrespecting somebody doesn't mean just letting them walk over you. A lot of times, like, certain circles will just, like, be like, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm being respectful. Like, no, you're not, right? You're just letting somebody walk over you. It's completely different from being respectful, right? And being polite. Being polite is, like, not yelling at my teammate. because I think they're stupid, or because they're like 232 as a support, which is really bad. You know, kind of those situations where it's like, okay, like he's not inherently doing anything, right? He's playing the game, so let him play the game, you know, which, I mean, I'm guilty of, you know, taking the game a little too serious. A lot. So just treating your teammates with respect is one. That's a big one. Oh no. Another is, you know, so be polite, treat them with respect. They're people too. Shouldn't have to be something that you say. Sometimes it is. And this kind of doesn't just apply to video games, but kind of overall. Never like hate someone. Like, it's not really what we're called to do. You know, it's not my job to be hating people. So don't do it. You know? Just don't be doing that. And don't be just hating people. Nobody. No, like nobody. Oh, but what about X person, bro? No, like you can't hate them either. Like, not hating anybody means not hating anybody. You don't just get an exception because, well, Jimothy stole my lunchbox when I was 4. Like, no. you don't get a special exemption for that. And I know somebody's gonna be like, well, what about Donald? What about Donald Trump? Or what about the Democrats? Yeah, I should be hating them, right? No. What are you thinking? That's judgmental. I shouldn't be saying that. But you know what I mean. You should not be thinking that. Right? You're not the one called to judge them. Right? You can judge people's fruits. Right? That is completely, I shouldn't say you should be judging their fruits, but you can look at somebody's fruits, and by looking at their fruits, kind of be like, is this somebody I should be replicating? Is this somebody who's good? Is this somebody who's truthful? Is this, you know, as I forgot I was going. Do they show the fruits of the spirit or not? You know, are they bring that out of other people, or they bring bad out of other people? You know, look at their fruits and not the person. Okay. If your team is screaming at you, this doesn't mean that you can look at their scoreboard and then yell at them if they're doing bad, right? That's not looking at the fruits. That's just looking at their scoreboard and then yelling at them, right? Because you've already brought, oh, I'm gonna yell at my teammate in my head, and then you look at the scoreboard and use the scoreboard to kind of say, yeah, I can yell at them, right? So don't do that. Okay. Better yet, just don't be angry at people. Pretty simple. And if you do, forgive, right? Forgiveness is probably the biggest thing, and everyone struggles with it. Right? Everyone gets angry at somebody. Everyone, like, you know, has a bad day. Everyone has those moments. I'm not saying those moments don't happen. I have those moments a lot, especially playing an online game, which is kind of how this fits in, because it's very easy in an online game to kind of like have your emotions exemplified for some reason. Like, for some reason, online games are very emotional. They bring emotions out of us, right? I don't know why. Somebody get like a psychologist on this, because it brings out people's emotions, right? Part of it's probably they just want to win, right? I would assume that's a big one. You know, it's just, oh, I want to win this game. this dude's not doing enough to win. Whatever, right? And part of it probably is pride, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm so good at this game that I can't be the one making mistakes, right? My teammate has to be making the mistakes, not me. Right? Where it's kind of like, oh, no, I'm doing everything right. It's just our XYZ's fault, you know? And I'm guilty of that. We do that in everything in life, though, right? I think I've definitely done that a few times. Group projects, you know? Big thing for me where I'm like, oh, it's my partner's fault, not mine. No, never my fault. Always my partner's fault. You know, we kind of look at other people, and instead of just being honest and being like, yeah, you know, I'm not doing that much. I'm maybe not serving the kingdom the greatest. We'll blame other people and be like, no, they're doing it. It's their fault, right? I'm not the one not showing the kingdom. They're not. Well, they're not a Christian, so it's okay. Like, bro. Alright, come on. And, let's be honest, we even do this inside of Christianity. Right? Within different denominations and stuff. We do that a lot. Right? I was at church this other week. Right? Not to pass judgment on people. I don't like to do that. Okay? The story's just an example. Okay? Using prayer as an example. I've done this too, right? Where I've been like, oh, why is this dude in church? Okay? But not really the scenario, right? I saw this the other week when somebody was like, oh, well, these people aren't really Christians because they're more likely to be conservative. And I was like, seriously? That's like the marker that we have. No, I used to do that too. I used to do it all the time. Where I'd be like, oh, this person can't be Christian, they're Democrat, or whatever, you know? Where it's kind of like we make our own rules for what something can or can't be. And we do this in these games all the time, right? Oh, this dude can't be a DPS. He has no damage, or whatever. Insert game role here. They're not doing enough of this, so they can't be that, you know? And but then this is kind of where the book, not the book, sorry, the quote, judge not lest ye be judged, kind of comes in, where it's like, when you have those bad games, right, all of a sudden it's not your fault. Right? You're the dude on the team with no kills, no damage, and all of a sudden it's not your fault, right? And when the judgment passes on you, all of a sudden it's unfair, right? Where we're kind of saying, no, this judgment isn't fair, you're doing wrong, not me. But if you were in my scenario, you're doing a lot wrong, you know? Which is not good. Because, right, we're judging somebody based on our own rules that we've created, right? And we're judging our fellow brother, right? Even if they're not Christian, right? You still, it doesn't give you any more right to judge them, or any, you know, it doesn't give you any, like, ground over them, you know? Jesus never, like, taught that, where he's like, oh, non-Christians you can, like, trample on. Like, no, that's not a thing, right? You can't do that. And you can't use that to excuse your actions as well. Okay, that's a little, come on, you know? But in these games, right, I think we learned the perfect lesson of judge not lest ye be judged, right? The same rules that we use to judge people by, when they're applied to us, they're unfair. And when we apply them to other people, it's fair, you know? And that's kind of part of what Jesus is teaching, you know? That the judgments that we create are not fair, right? But Jesus' judgment is fair on us. And in these games, we need to remember this, right? Don't judge other people and don't be rude. Shouldn't have to say that. But another thing, to kind of just while you're playing to think about is, would somebody know I'm a Christian from the way I'm playing? And that's not saying like, oh, I'm popping off, so I'm not a Christian, right? That's not what that is, right? It's not, oh, I'm having a crazy game, popping off, going crazy, or I'm not going crazy, so I'm not a Christian, or whatever. Right? It's more about how our actions are being seen in the game. So, when I'm playing these online games, right? As I said, think about how your actions are perceived, right? Am I reflecting Christ in my actions? Am I out here cursing out my teammates, being a douchebag, and being rude, right? And part of it too is in your heart, right? Because you can say, oh, I'm not actually saying those things, right? Well, you're still thinking them, right? You're still going to do, you just don't do it out loud, right? And there's a difference between temptation of things and doing things but just not doing them, you know? Where it's like, oh, I didn't actually do it. I just, you know, I thought about doing it and I was going to do it, but I just didn't do it out loud. Like, come on, dude. Your heart's still there. You're still cursing them out behind your camera, right? Behind your microphone, you're still cursing them out. So it's not about how you're specifically being seen in the game either. It's how you're acting outside of the game as well. And you have to think, like, I mean, I don't think we're all spreading the gospel through video games, but I mean, they're not gonna know that you're a Christian, right? But a lot of the times how we react in one scenario is how we react in other scenarios as well, right? So if you're out here cursing up a storm in a video game because you're doing bad, how are you reacting in real life when things are going bad? You know? Oh, I'm not actually cursing out my coworkers. I'm just thinking about doing, like, I'm just gonna do it. I just don't do it out loud. Like, you still have that position in your heart where you're like, you know, angry at them for no reason, or you're judging them for no reason, right? You just aren't doing it in a tangible manner, I'd say, right? And kind of, you know, it's easy to say, oh, do this, do this. I struggle with this a lot, you know? I blame my teammates. You know, nothing's ever my fault. My teammates are idiots. That kind of thing, right? But the thing is, they're not. And I do this not even just in here, in sports and everything else, right? Where I'm like, oh, this dude, it's this dude's fault, right? This dude is a big dummy. And it's his fault. And he should be put to death. No, I'm joking. But kind of that scenario where, like, you know, this dude deserves this for this action. I'm perfect. They're not. But how does it look, you know, in reflecting Christ? Your teammates not know that you're a Christian, right? But again, that's flowing out to other parts of your life, right? One thing, I think he's taking my great uncle. I don't really know what he is to me. One thing he used to tell me when he was alive was, whatever you put in comes out. So if you're putting in a ton of just negative info and anger and everything else, well, you're gonna bring out anger and everything else, right? You're not going to be like spreading love to other people or showing other people God. You're just gonna be kind of angry and being like angry at people, right? And then in your heart, you're also going to be very angry, because your heart is also how you are, right? You're just going to be very angry. You're just going to be like, you might not be saying out loud, oh, this dude's evil, this dude's blah, 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 right? X, Y, and Z. But in your heart, you're like, this dude is X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times we kind of like shield that, keep those things in, and then we're like, oh, but if I just keep it in, it's fine, right? Which, again, very clear difference between temptation and just doing the action, but not tangibly, right? Not like out loud. You're still doing the action, right? Because the reason that it's like so bad isn't just you're saying it, right? You're also believing it in your heart as well, right? Because, you know, you can just say stuff, right? You're still, if you say something right, I think everyone would be like, yeah, if you say something that's sinful, that's a sin, right? You're like saying things that would lead you down that route. Okay, like if I'm cursing out my teammate, right? I think everyone would be like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not good. You're not really called to do that. Cool. But magically, if I don't say it out loud and I just curse him out in my head, well, now it's not a sin. I just thought it. Like, no, dude. And again, that's not what temptation is. Temptation is, I would say temptation is a thought that pops into your head, right? But, and again, just with these thoughts in your head, there's an aspect of acting on the temptation, right? Because temptation, when you act on it, becomes a sin. But feeling that temptation isn't a sin, right? I mean, Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, right? The devil came to try to tempt him. But a very, you know, clear thing is he didn't like mull over the temptation. He was like, oh, and then didn't obviously give in. So when you're thinking about that, think about how you're treating people behind the camera as well as in front of the camera, and how you're reflecting Christ, right? And then start looking at around other parts of your life. Be like, yeah, you know what? I am just really angry with people. And maybe that does show up in video games. Maybe it does come from there, you know? Because what you put in is coming out. If you're just putting in a ton of angry people, angry video games, well, you're probably gonna end up a pretty angry person. Like, the line is there, right? And if you're putting in Christ, and, you know, you can have those rest moments in Christ, right, to play video games. That's perfectly fine. You can have your rest to do activities, right? Like, as long as the activity isn't a sin, you're chilling. For the most part. You understand what I'm trying to say, right? When you're doing something, God gives you things that are restful. Going for a hike, right? Going for a hike isn't sinful. If I'm going for a hike to avoid reading my Bible and going to church every week, well, okay, now we might be having an issue. Or if I'm using the hike and I'm skipping work, I'm just not doing anything. Okay, yeah, like that's slovenly, right? And it's very easy and very common for us to just be like, oh, but video games, like, yeah, video games are not inherently just like good, right? But they also aren't just inherently bad. You have to use judgment with them. God gives us, you know, the ability to make decisions and free will, and he gives us guidelines on what things to focus on, right? What is true, what is righteous, all those. I don't have my Bible in front of me, so I don't have the verse out, but all these things, think on them, right? God gives us those guidelines to reflect on for things in our lives, right? And with video games, you gotta think about that too. Is this video game good? Is it putting good things into me? If no, don't play it. And you're gonna see that in your life no matter what you're putting in, okay? So, kind of thinking about that. I struggle with this too. How do we show that? Right? How do we turn our heart? Right? For me, a big thing has been whenever you're like angry at somebody, instead of cursing them, bless them. You know, like think about like, you know, pray and be like, God, please just bless this person's day, let them have a great day. You know, instead of being like instead of being like in Spider-Man 2, like Flash, where you're like, where he literally prays for God to kill Peter Parker. Like, don't be doing that, right? Be praying for God to bless this person, have them have a better day, you know, those kind of things. And when you do that repeatedly, you're gonna start seeing that change in your life. And I mean, it's really hard. I'm not gonna sit here and just lie and be like, yeah, we're so easy. It took me like a week. No, I still struggle with it. I mean, I think I'll always struggle sometimes with it, you know, because it's not just something that you can turn overnight, right? You have to consciously make the effort not to curse this person, bless them, and to see how you can serve them as well, right? See how you can serve people, because when you think about and you look at, we're called to reflect Christ in our lives, right? And Christ obviously made the ultimate sacrifice, laying down his life for us, but we're also called to make sacrifices for other people, right? It's not just you know, don't do anything for them, tell them, oh, I'll pray for you, pray for them once a week and you're good, right? It's more, you know, showing Christ's love requires us to sacrifice for people. So look how you can sacrifice for people, because that's really gonna change the way that you think as well, because you're gonna start thinking more around you know, how can I serve this person? And it's gonna kind of change your heart a little bit, where you're like looking for chances to sacrifice for people instead of just like being like, oh, this person's doing this wrong. So look for those two things. In online games, it's a little bit harder to sacrifice for people, but you know, you can still find those opportunities. And maybe like a big example that I just thought of is like in those games like Ark, you know, giving up something for new players. It's a pretty common thing, but you know, if you can sacrifice to make their lives a little bit easier, you should probably do it. You know, and it'll help change your heart towards people. So those are kind of the big things to look at in our lives when we're playing these online games, and how to like traverse them as a Christian. So I just pray that you'll go out, you know, reflect Christ to those around you, and reflect Christ in the games that you're playing as well. See you later. Stay stinky.